stare, armed with only a flashlight. The halls echoed strangely, and old gurneys sat rusting in the corners. As I passed one of the empty operating rooms, I heard a faint whisper. Scalpel. My flashlight flickered. In the beam of light, a shadow moved across the far wall. Something tall, something dragging metal across the floor. I ran and never looked back. Next story. At first, it was just a light flickering in the basement. Then it was the sound of chairs scraping across the floor when no one was home. I blamed faulty wiring, old pipes, the usual. But one evening, while retrieving laundry from the basement, I heard it, a child's laughter, soft and cruel, echoing from the shadows. I ran upstairs, locking the door behind me, but not before seeing tiny, dusty footprints following me across the cement floor. Next story, I inherited my grandmother's farmhouse when she passed away. It was old, creaky, but charming. In the attic, I found dozens of porcelain dolls she had collected, each staring blankly into space. I packed them away in boxes, thinking nothing of it. But at night, I heard fine knocking coming from the attic. And sometimes, when I passed the mirror, I swore I saw dozens of tiny figures behind me, watching with glassy eyes. Next story, I love browsing thrift stores. One afternoon, I found a vintage camera, old leather strap, slightly cracked lens. I bought it on a whim. When I developed the first roll of film, the photos showed not what I had captured, but scenes from other places. A graveyard at midnight, an abandoned nursery, a blood-stained kitchen. Worse, in every photo, there was a figure in the background, getting closer, smiling wider. Next story. My brother always warned me about the well behind our childhood home. He said it wasn't just old, it was alive. I thought it was just a scary story, until one summer night when I heard singing from the bottom of it. Sweet, hypnotic. Against every instinct, I leaned over the edge. Something cold and wet brushed my face, and a voice whispered, "Jump." I ran. But even now, sometimes, I hear that same song drifting through my open window. Next story. We were hiking deep in the mountains when we stumbled across an abandoned cabin. The door swung open with a groan, revealing a perfectly preserved interior, dustless, as if someone had just left. On the kitchen table sat a single plate of steaming food. No one else was supposed to be there. As we backed away, we heard the unmistakable creak of footsteps upstairs, even though the stairs had collapsed decades ago. Next story. For weeks, I kept waking up at exactly 2:17 a.m. every night, without fail. At first, I thought it was insomnia, but then I noticed things had moved overnight. A chair closer to my bed, a door left slightly ajar. One night, determined to catch the cause, I set up a camera. The next morning, I checked the footage. At exactly 2:17, my sleeping body sat upright, staring directly into the lens, eyes wide open. Next story. My new apartment came with a cheap antique floor-length mirror. I didn't think much of it until I noticed something odd. My reflection blinked out of sync with me. At first, just a second too late, then longer. And one night, my reflection smiled, even though I hadn't. Now, every time I turn my back, I hear soft footsteps behind me, and I'm too scared to check if it's still just my reflection. Отлично. Вот еще 20 длинных историй сразу, без остановки. Her next story. My friend got a new house, ridiculously cheap, almost suspiciously cheap. But he didn't care. A steal's a steal, right? After he moved in, he started talking about the smell of smoke in the halls and hearing old-timey music playing at odd hours. Then came the burnt handprints on his bathroom mirror. The house had been the site of a fire decades ago, one that claimed the family who once lived there. And now it seemed they never really left. Next story, I was dog sitting for my cousin while she was on vacation. Her place was out in the country, miles from anywhere. One night, while I was reading, her dog suddenly sat up, crawling at the front door. I went to check. Nothing there. But then, the knocking started. Soft, rhythmic, persistent. The dog whimpered and backed away. I never saw anyone. The knocking just stopped. But that night, I dreamed of a gaunt figure pressing its face against the glass. Next story. Every night for a week, I received the same text message. Come outside. I lived alone. Each night I ignored it. Each night, the knocks on my window got louder, angrier. Finally, one night, I turned on every light, grabbed a bat, and opened the door. Nothing. Just the empty street and the cold wind. I turned back and found muddy footprints leading from the window to the door. Next story. The dog started barking at the wall again. It had become a regular thing, always around 3 a.m. He'd stand there, growling low, staring at the same spot in the living room. I thought maybe it was mice or old pipes creaking, anything but what my gut was telling me. One night, fed up and half asleep, I dragged a chair over and tapped on the wall. Solid, normal. But then, from inside the wall, something tapped back. I froze. My dog whimpered and bolted down the hallway. Slowly, slowly, I pressed my ear against the plaster and heard breathing, heavy, raspy breathing, right on the other side. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't sleep the next either. On the third night, I woke up to find a crack running from floor to ceiling where the tapping had been, wide enough now that in the moonlight, I could just barely see. Fingers slipping through. I moved out before they found a way in. Next story. I never liked the basement in my childhood home. It wasn't just the smell of damp concrete or the flicker of the old light bulb. It was the feeling that something down there was waiting. One summer, when I was about 13, my parents left me home alone for the weekend. I spent most of my time upstairs, ignoring the basement completely. But on the second night, I heard a noise coming from below, a slow, deliberate dragging sound. I figured it was a burst pipe, or maybe a critter that had gotten in. Grabbing a flashlight, I crept down the wooden stairs. The basement was freezing, much colder than usual. My breath came out in puffs, and the beam of my flashlight shook in my hands. In the center of the room, something was moving under the old, dusty tarp we kept over some storage boxes. The shape was wrong. Bigger than any raccoon or rat. Taller, and the dragging sound was coming from it, like fingernails scraping against the floor. I backed up, ready to bolt, but then the tarp shifted, and a hand slipped out from underneath. Bale. Too long, too thin. I ran upstairs so fast I almost broke my neck. I locked the basement door and piled furniture against it. I didn't sleep until my parents came home. When we went to check the basement the next morning, everything was normal, except the floor. It had deep, bloody scratches leading right up to the bottom of the stairs. Next story. I always thought nightmares stayed in your dreams, that they couldn't reach you once you woke up. That changed last winter. I started having the same nightmare every night, walking through an endless hallway, doors lining both sides. Each door had a name scratched into it, names I didn't recognize. I could hear whispers behind each door, growing louder as I walked. At the end of the hallway, there was always a mirror, and every time I looked into it, my reflection smiled back at me, even when I didn't. One night, I jolted awake, heart pounding, sweat pouring down my face. I sat up, trying to shake it off, and then I saw it. The mirror on my bedroom wall, the real mirror, was fogged up, like someone had breathed on it, and written in the condensation were 3 words, "Let me out." I ripped the mirror off the wall and threw it into the trash outside. But sometimes, when the light hits the new mirror just right, I still see a second set of eyes staring back at me. Next story. My grandpa always warned me never to pick up hitchhikers at night. "They're not always what they seem," he'd say with a wink. I thought he was just being old-fashioned. One rainy evening, driving down an empty country road, I saw her, a young woman in a torn white dress, soaking wet, standing on the shoulder with her thumb out. I should have kept driving, but she looked desperate, cold. I pulled over and rolled down the window. She didn't speak, just got in silently, dripping water all over the passenger seat. For a few miles, it was silent. Then she turned her head and stared at me, her face pale, her eyes completely black. No whites, no pupils. I slammed on the brakes. She didn't move, just kept staring, unblinking. When I looked away for half a second to unbuckle my seatbelt, she vanished. Not, opened the door and left. Just gone. The seat was still wet. The smell of rain still heavy in the car. I drove the rest of the way home, shaking like a leaf. When I told my grandpa, he just nodded slowly. "Consider yourself lucky," he said. "She only needed a ride. Some of them want more."